Okay, anger, alleviating anger. What an interesting topic to teach. I was sharing with the girls before I hit record. I've had a lot of chances this week to practice what I preach. I have a saying that I like to tell people, teach what you practice, not necessarily practice what you teach. But if you're going to teach something, then you should walk it out and vice versa. Everything that I share with you, it's really just comes from personal life experience of, hey, this works. Which I find it interesting when I'm up against science, and science will say, well, there's no scientific evidence to back up whatever. I will go to town. I will throw down with somebody if they start questioning something that I'm teaching, only because, not because I'm arrogant, not because I'm prideful, but it's because I have walked this out. I have literally lived this, whether it's, we talked about bitterness a few weeks ago, or like tonight with anger. I don't play around, especially when it comes to emotions. I shared last week about sunscreen, eating your sunscreen. So many of you guys are new to me and maybe don't know that I teach a whole class on how to eat your sunscreen, which is super fun for me. And I just shared, and there was someone who shared my article, and a woman was starting to bust my chops about, like, oh, that means you mean to say just to eat your food, you don't get skin cancer, you don't need sunscreen, da, da, da. I'm like, listen, sister, my kid had cancer. They said it was going to come back. It never did. I mean, we can do this all day if you want, but I'm going to just tell you I'm right. And I say that as we start to dive into anger, if I haven't had enough practice, as sure as I'm sitting here, the Lord will be like, hey, you need a little more practice in working through anger before you start talking to these people about it. So let's get to town. This is why I'm sharing all of that with you. I come before you as honestly as I can. I think Sarah and I have worked together the longest out of anybody. I'm so grateful for anybody who's come to my classes, but she can attest to, I've lived this, and I walk it out and I adjust and tweak. And it's like, oh man, if I didn't do well in that area, then I'm going to go back and say, what could I have done different? So I'll give you an example of my week. It just cracks me up seeing posts on social media. I mean, isn't that just anger triggering for all of us nowadays? It's just whatever. Not having everything I needed at the DPS today. If you do not live in Texas, you don't know the joy of going to a Texas DPS. I promise you, it is an experience to have. I'm like, I feel like, I finally said to I was chatting with a bank today, and I said to the lady at the bank, I said, you know what? Texas doesn't want me living here. And frankly, the feeling is quite mutual after all of this. So you all can, not you, but Texas, you can have your license. I just wanted to take my toys and go home. It was just funny. So that was interesting. I'm house hunting. That's proving to be a bit of a challenge. I just walked through what would have been my 23rd anniversary. My husband's birthday would be this Friday. I mean, it's just like on and on and on it goes. And I had a friend ask, like, thinking about my anniversary, she asked how I was. I said, I'm just angry, honestly. So I realized anger is that. Yes, Lisa, most DPS are quite rude. Just on a side note, I look around there today, I'm going, if you are so miserable and you don't like this job, why are you here? I don't understand. And then I thought, maybe I should get a job, and then I'd probably be fired because I would be maybe too sunny and just want to talk people out of their sadness about being at the DPS. Anyway, that would not be a job for me. So as we walk through things in life, sometimes we have weeks like I've had where it's just, you have this beautiful opportunity to walk it out. Sometimes it comes up little bits here and there. But what I realize is anger gets a bad rap. For those of you who are on here live, you don't have to do a show of hands, you can, or do in the chat, but how many of you think that anger is a negative emotion? Maybe before we started talking, would that have been something that you thought? Sure. Most of us would have said, yeah, anger is a negative emotion. Nobody wants that. And as I've studied this and prayed through it a lot with anger, I think it's actually not a negative emotion. It can be, but it's not solely. And really, anytime, let me back it up. As I have walked through tremendous grief, I was thinking about just being a widow now. And I know some people have lost children, and there's so much to losing a loved one. It is a grief like no other. It's hard. It's a something that you can't explain until you're walking in it. And before that, I mean, I've even, you guys know my story. I've had all kinds of trauma. Before that, I probably would have sat in the camp of anger, sadness, grief, depression. All of these are negative. And yes, they have a low frequency. But if used right and walked through appropriately and understood, they can come out, you can come out much better, thriving. You can grow from it, and you can look back and see it had purpose. I think I shared in one of the classes either last week or the week before about when I lost our baby Judah. And I remember praying, God, don't waste my grief. Grief wasn't a bad thing. It didn't feel good, but it wasn't bad because something really incredible came out of it. I mean, my goodness, it was the catalyst to help me teach emotional health. It gave me a voice. It gave me a platform. It gave me street cred. So as we think about anger, I would like to challenge you guys to shift your mind and say, okay, it can be negative, but as we talk about it and say, well, let's discover why we might have anger, what we need to alleviate, different descriptions of anger, different types of anger, I should say, and then what we can do. There's really only going to be two things to alleviate it. It's not a big secret. It's a good thing you guys didn't pay for this class, because you might be like, I paid for that. That was easy. So it's free. So I can give you just like basic, and you'll go, but it's so basic and so simple. It's like, wait, what? It was there all along. So I get a lot of my definitions about emotions from scripture. I love it because Hebrew is the first language in the whole wide world, and it's so rich. It's like Hebrew and Greek. If you're ever going to study any languages, dude, those two are great, because Greeks, when they talk, it's like they would describe this green bottle, like this green dark amber container with this luscious lime green vibrant label. I mean, just words. In English, we're like, man, it's a bottle of stress away, period. It's so basic. So when you speak in English, it's like, first of all, we say silly things and it's a little bit backwards, but in Greek, it's rich. And in Hebrew, there's just same thing. It's so rich. There's so much more to talk about. So when I looked up the word anger in the Hebrew, there were 7 different words for anger. It's different types of anger. It's just like love. I don't know how many of you know, there's 7 or 9 different Greek words for love. And in English, we just have one word. Oh, I love ice cream. I love my dog. I love my kids. I love my husband, all these things. And I don't love ice cream. Okay, that's a bad example. I don't love pizza as much as I love my kids, right? Like it's a different love. I have a fond affection for ice cream, or I might have you guys get it. With anger, it's like this. So outbursts of passion is one type of anger. A displeasure, that if I was feeling displeasure, I wouldn't necessarily use anger. To me, it's different. Indignation. Now that's an anger I can get behind, honestly. To grieve, someone grieves you, it can be that anger feeling. To cause trouble, breathing heavily is another way that we use the word anger in the Hebrew or even in Greek. So if you start to think about these different descriptions of anger, all of a sudden your mind can go, oh, these are some different reasons why I would be angry. Would you ever fault someone for being angry because they had some injustice done to them? I saw a news article today. I subscribe to the Dallas Morning News because I need to see what's going on in the world, whether it's right or wrong, but I want my finger on the culture. And I saw an article on there that was so infuriating because it was someone getting away with, for a season of time, some heinous act. And to me, that kind of anger wasn't wrong or damaging. The trick is when you have anger, when you feel it, understanding what it is, where it comes from, acknowledging that you have it, and then saying, okay, what can I do with this? So anger is triggered by a variety of reasons, as obviously I've just shared. Most of the time, it's like a block, a fear or a trauma, something that's manifesting as trauma, or you see some injustice in the news, some frustration, which is also a block. We talked about that last week. Frustration is a blocked goal. What's a goal that you have that's being blocked that can turn into anger, and it just sort of snowballs from there. It can be productive though. If you see injustice, let's say in the news or in our world or on social media, anger can be productive because it can move you to action. Now, if you're like me, I like to literally get up out of my seat and go do something. It's very hard for me sometimes to just sit and pray because I'm like this peeking around. Is there anything actually happening? I have to take it by faith that yes, something is happening. Anger is not necessarily a negative emotion, as I've just demonstrated, especially, again, if it moves you to action, if it helps you change your behavior. If you're like me, sometimes I get angry with myself for eating so much ice cream. It turns out after losing my husband, I realized, hi, I'm an emotional eater. I'm Jen Weir and I eat my emotions. So if you're all with me, you're in good company. For those of you who do not do that, then I need your secrets. So I've gotten frustrated with myself, like, I know better. I know better. That's so like I teach about emotions. I teach about how to release it. And sometimes that little pint of Ben and Jerry's is so much more lovely than the stress away. But I acknowledge it, right? Thank you, Lisa, you get it. So here we are. I get frustrated with myself. And so then it moves me to action. So I remind myself, I wrap myself out on a class and say, here it is. If you see me in a bathing suit this summer, you'll know my secret, but I can choose to reach for this. When you do something with the anger, that is one way to alleviate it. For example, if I'm mad at myself, I can see, can I change this? Absolutely. Okay, let's do something. Now I've just done something with the anger. I've done something productive. I release it. When it is productive, it's great. The anger subsides. It's no longer suppressed. But here's what happened, and here's what happens, and here's probably why you guys are here. Yes, stress away can be photosensitive. Also, if I put it over my forehead, which I was accustomed to doing, it starts to sting a bit. When anger is suppressed, shoved aside, or just allowed to build and fester, this is when it becomes dangerous. This is when people get all kinds of crazy and do all manner of crazy things. That manifestation of suppressed anger, shoved aside, allowed to build up, is why we all think anger is a negative emotion. When it comes to that point of you feeling rageful, start lashing out different every which way, now it's a mess. So the idea is, best case scenario is to head off with the past before that happens. With that in mind, what you would need to do, what I would need to do, is we need to find out, okay, what are our triggers? just briefly on triggers, we talk about this a lot in my Essentially Free class, or really any emotion class that I teach, but I haven't been doing that as much in these because I'm trying to keep them a little short, but I feel like with anger, it needs to be shared. So if you're unfamiliar with triggers, or it's maybe a vague term to you, basically a trigger is something that comes up and you have an emotional response that doesn't match your situation. For example, somebody steps in front of you in line at the market and you flip out in a rage. Like, how could you think you're so selfish, or you're so selfish, blah, 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 and you just go on and on and on and on. I've seen that happen. So I have not done that because that's not where my anger manifests, but I've watched other people do that. And I think, that was a trigger. I wonder what that person is being triggered about. Freaky, just really that kind of, I keep thinking about people who blow up at the market. It seems to happen in the last 2 years a lot. Road rage, people who, someone's going a little bit slower and then someone road rages around them and flips them off and does all kinds of lovely gestures to them. That's obviously a trigger. That doesn't, someone going slow in front of you or even cutting you off is not a reason to flip out. It doesn't match the situation. A child breaking something and the parent exploding, that doesn't match. That's a trigger. So the trick is to find out what are your triggers and why are you being triggered. A lot of times somebody will look like a representation of someone who hurt you in the past, or you'll hear a song, or you'll watch a show or something that it triggers a negative emotion in you, sadness, grief, fear, trauma, whatever. And then all of a sudden the person on the other end, or your situation you're in, they become the recipient of it. Yeah, it's very triggering, Sarah. I agree with you on that. It can be hard. And so knowing this, and we all have our triggers, it's not that we will alleviate them, but understanding that you have them is half the battle. So you can head them off of the past. One of the things that I teach is, let's say like the example that Sarah mentions, you're going to the market, then we do a little bit of self-talk. We ask, hey, why is that triggering? We all have a different reason why that may trigger us, or maybe it doesn't trigger you. We ask the question, a lot of times it's fear, it's frustration. And so what can we do about it, right? We go back and say, well, we can't go back in time, fix things. We can educate, we can show kindness, we can, there's a lot of things we can do. That's not what this class is about, but it's learning what we can do with the trigger so that we can stay in an emotionally healthy place. It's really managing your triggers is the best form of selfishness, I can think, like a good selfishness, right? Taking care of yourself first, putting your mask on first. And I mean the airplane mask, not this mask. Using your oils. There was a long time, Sarah knows this story, I've shared it 100 times, but when I lived in Massachusetts, I went and shopped at Walmart because it was the last store that didn't wear the mask, and I just didn't want to. It just was not for me. It was very triggering. I was molested as a kid. I don't want anything over my face. I would have a panic attack, literally a panic, and I don't have panic attacks. And so that would happen to me. And I don't like Walmart because I don't like how they treat their employees and on and on. And anyway, the slave trade products that they carry, which now it's like every store. I'm sorry, I get on my soapbox. Let's move on. So I was at Trader Joe's wearing the mask and I had a panic attack, and I had two choices. I either didn't buy food for my family or I had to wear the mask. And so I would use Trauma Life in the mask. And that really helped. It helped my trigger. It was like I couldn't do anything about that. In Massachusetts, it was a lot more strict, and they didn't have a lot of HelloFresh, Daily Harvest, those types of things up and running at that point. So you do what you have to do. But using Trauma Life was a huge trigger helper for me. The other thing I learned to do is, for me, I'm just giving you guys some tips for trigger management. I have earbuds that I'll listen to podcasts, sermons, music. I put on a good happy playlist for a long time and just would hit play and really zone out, which was kind of hard for me because, as you can probably assume, that I'm a people person and I talk to everybody at the grocery store. So having that was not my best, but it helped me get into a good place. We do happiness triggers. So smiling, music, dancing, playing. Sarah, if you can remember one, I know Sarah's walked through that time. I know, I feel like I'm missing one, but just some happiness triggers so that when you start to feel yourself be triggered, you can get yourself out of that. Knowing what triggers you is going to help you alleviate anger before it even begins. Or if you start to feel anger rise up in your belly, usually it starts, in your stomach, in your diaphragm area, that burning, almost indigestion feel. If you start to feel that, you can pause, think it through. Am I being triggered? Why am I being triggered? What can I do about it in this situation, and move on? Now, if you are someone who has a lot of residual anger, you might want to go back and listen to the bitterness class and start walking through that. Chances are, if it's built up into now you're at this rage point, probably a lot of bitterness there, that there's some roots and it's creating some angry, rageful fruit. So it's not, I don't want to say it's easy to manage and get rid of, but if you understanding is power, right? If you understand where it's coming from, chances are you're going to be able to alleviate it, release it, rid yourself of that, and then move forward in a healthy way. Going back to when was the first time I felt this? What was the cause of it? What's the root? When was the seed planted? All of those things will help. So I said before, I'm going to share 2 things with you to help alleviate anger. Again, super glad you guys aren't paying for this because this is so basic, but I guarantee, I know for me, I'm like, I tend to forget this. Okay. Number 1, you probably all know what I'm going to say, but it's breathing. Breathing is the number 1 thing you can do to alleviate anger. If you are familiar with Young Living and Young Living members, you'll know that, and it's funny, it's one thing I have not participated in because I thought I'm going to be busy, I won't pay attention to it, and I wish I had, but a lot of people are doing a lymph challenge. So instead of joining a group, because I knew I was going to be out of town with my daughter and just doing some stuff, I thought, okay, I'm going to look up some things. I know how to cleanse my lymph system. I'm going to, in my mind, just do it. When I started researching cleansing your lymph system, the number 1 thing, the very first thing listed in most articles and research I read was breathing. I thought, of course, because when we sit and we shallow breathe, everything gets sluggish. Your lymph system gets sluggish. And so if they haven't shared that with you in the lymph challenge, go tell someone in there. They need to know. But breathing is so important. We all tend to shallow breathe. When I find myself feeling angry and feeling upset, I can tell, if I just stop for a second, I'm like, how am I breathing? It's all up here. It's crazy. I'm just going, oh wait, this stuff is real, man. So with that in mind, let's take some lavender. Good, they have talked about breathing. Oh, thank God, that's awesome. I assume they would, because if anybody's teaching a challenge like that and they're walking through, they would have done their research. But I just thought that was so fascinating. So let's everyone take your lavender oil if you've got it, or if you don't have it, just whatever's in front of you. And I want to walk through some breathing. We're going to do some deep breathing together, because if you came here this evening or whenever you're watching this later, you might be feeling some of that anger. And breathing together collectively really, really helps. So we're going to take a few minutes. I'm going to walk you through some breath work, some techniques that I've learned over the years that help. Okay, so first of all, we'll put it on our hand. I do this, I put the oil in and I sit there and gab for another 5 minutes and I'm going, is it even there? My hand is shiny, so it's there. So then we go ahead and rub it together in our hand, right? That's going to break it up. I think about like, any kind of like like when you rub a lemon together, right? And you roll it before you zest it, just to start breaking up all those molecules, all the fragrance. So as we do that, we're going to, maybe activate the oil, whatever you want to say, but it just opens it up. And settle yourself down. Sometimes we're in a store, we're getting triggered, and we need to just quickly breathe in and take a couple good deep breaths. But since we have some time and we're here together, you're watching this later, get yourself settled. So what I mean by that is sit as square as you can. Plant your feet firmly on the floor, uncross your legs. I sit on my feet a lot, so I have to make sure that, my feet are on the floor, and just kind of lean back so we're not just all uptight like this. Just sit back and relax. And then take your hands, cup over your nose and mouth, close down your eyes, and imagine just breath coming all the way from below your belly button. And we'll breathe in together. And then exhale. And then do it again. I'm going to talk as you guys do it. So you breathe it in for a count of 4, 3, 4. Hold your breath just a little bit. Okay, now exhale it out for a 4 count. Good. Let's do that one more time. Breathe it in, 2, 3, 4. Hold it. Now blow it out really hard. It's like you're breathing in good, fresh oxygen. And then you just blow out all the carbon dioxide and all the things that are triggering you. One of the things that you'll notice if you're in tune, as you breathe, you'll notice that your heart rate slows down. Your pulse becomes slower. If you have one of those, like an Apple Watch or a smartwatch, you can look at your heart rate before you start breathing, and then look at your heart rate after. It's really cool just to see it drop just a few beats. You start to feel your breath just automatically slow down. Now, what I'd love for you guys to participate with me, and if you have your stress away, if you don't, then just keep using the oil. Take your stress away on top of your lavender, whatever oil you just had. And now before we breathe, think of something that gets you angry. Something that triggers you. Let it kind of roll in your mind. I don't want you to dwell on it too long. Oh my gosh, Lisa, that dog is so dang cute. Sorry, that was a side. Oh, look at that face. Okay, focus, people. Maybe that was irritating you just now that I got sidetracked by a dog. Think of that. Go ahead. I'm going to do this too. So we'll think about it together. And then let's, from the belly, below your belly button, breathe the oils into that thought. Notice the change. Okay, ready? Breathe. Breathe them in again, just one more time. One of the things that I like to do with breathing, when I teach breathing, obviously we go for a 3 to 4 count. But if you have good lung capacity, try to breathe in as deeply as you can. If your lung capacity isn't quite there, if they're just not used to breathing, just breathe in as deep and as long as you can. But the longer the breaths you can take, and then holding it and then exhaling, it's so good to expand your lungs. It's just like exercise for your lungs. But then you're able to breathe it out, breathe it all out. So typically what happens is when you think of a triggering memory or something that comes up and you breathe in your oils, like we just did, breathe the oils into that memory. It's like it takes the oil molecules and just shatters those thoughts, those negative thoughts, the things that's triggering you, and dissipates it. It becomes, in my mind, it becomes like dust, almost like I can just blow it away as I blow out the air. Hope that makes sense. And so if you are coming into a situation that is triggering, that's causing some anger, do that. Then walk in with confidence. Oh, I like that, Lisa. Breathe in 3, hold 7, blow out 8. That's lovely. Yeah, and I love the techniques, and you guys will get, as you practice breath work, maybe you all know about breath work. If you do, I would encourage you to play around with it, just like your oils. Play around with your oils. Really get comfortable with using different things. One of the things that I find a little challenging in our world of essential oils now is we're always saying, well, what oil is good for? That's fair. I mean, I asked the same thing. And I still wonder, like, what oil is good for this? I actually looked at what oil is good for anger, and it is a list. So I'm like, okay, so every oil that's an emotional, perfect. Really, whatever oil resonates with you. And as you play around with your oils, play around with your breathing. And what's neat is that when you start to do that, you will find that different amounts of breathing, meaning different hold times, different breathe in times, different exhales, can actually unlock different emotions that are trapped. Yeah, frankincense, that is the best, one of the best. So for example, if you've ever had an emotion where you're like, I know I have this and I don't feel it releasing, try breathing in deeper. Try holding it for another little bit longer. Try exhaling it longer. Change it up with your oils. One of the oils that I like to switch up in between my time of breath work is lemon. It's kind of like when you smell coffee beans, right? It just sort of clears the palate. Lemon does the same thing. So if you've ever have a situation where you're like, I'm not getting anywhere emotionally with this breathing, just switch it up with some lemon. It's sharp, it wakes up your senses, it opens all of your, not all of your receptors, but it has a similar effect. Okay, so breathing. It is so important. And I'm so grateful if you're doing that lymphatic challenge or a lymphatic cleanse. I don't know what they're calling. I'm sorry. Forgive my words. Whatever with the lymph system, if you're doing that, I'm so grateful that you're learning about breath work as well. Just keep doing that. The second, thank you, challenge. The second thing to do, remember I mentioned there's 2 things. The second thing is express your anger. So many people don't express their anger. They just don't, for a variety of reasons. And probably number one, like what we shared earlier, most of us think that anger is negative. So if I come to you and I'm like, oh, I have so much anger, I feel so frustrated and just this rage, whatever, that might make you go, oh, I don't want to be by her. That feels a little, that's hard. Keep the peace. Yes, certain personalities are just peacekeepers at all costs. There is a difference between a peacemaker and a peacekeeper. A peacemaker, if you're not familiar with the difference, a peacemaker will seek both sides out, try to come to a peaceful resolution that suits everybody. This is a gift. If that is you, I need you in my back pocket because I am not a peacemaker. I'm a wave maker, a ruffler, as it were. It's just how I'm designed. And peacemakers are just designed that. It's a beautiful gift. Now there's peacekeepers, and those are, they don't want to make waves. It's terrifying. They'll sacrifice their own happiness and goals just to keep the peace so that we don't have to do that. Those folks who are peacekeepers tend to have a lot of stuffed anger because they've never been allowed to actually be true to themselves, allowed by themselves, allowed by family, friends, coworkers, whoever it is. Somebody, a lot of times themselves, won't let them express it. They won't admit it for whatever reason. Anger can be productive, as we mentioned. So anger is not a negative thing. It's not a bad thing. It's what you do with it. That's where the rub comes in. So if you're breathing and still having some anger troubles, then perhaps you need to be reminded that you have to express it, admit it, get it out. There may be things in this world that you and I cannot do anything about right at that moment. We can always pray. We know that. We can also always be a light to somebody else, that many times shifts your anger. There have been times I know when I'm frustrated or I'm just about something different, and I'm meet up with somebody when I'm out and about, whatever, and I just can see that, you know what, they're having a rough day, which is funny when you're having a rough day and you see someone else having a rough day. If you walk through emotional healing and you understand how this works, you're maybe more likely to seek out how to help that person. All of a sudden it brings you up and out of your junk. That makes sense. Seeking others out to help them versus commiserating, huge difference. No matter what, alleviating your anger so that it doesn't stick with you by expressing it, talking it out. There's some options with expressing. You can talk to the person or talk it out with the person that you are angry with. This may require some emotional work, though. If you are a peacekeeper by nature, not by nature, that's actually a learned behavior. If you're a peacekeeper because you don't want to ruffle and it can just get too hard. I get that. Please hear me. I'm not criticizing anybody. My husband he was by nature a peacemaker, but often veered off to the peacekeeper because of how he was raised. So we had to work that out. So for example, when he and I would have a discussion that I guess people call an argument or whatever, I didn't see it as arguing. I'm like, we're just talking this out. But because of his personality, he was like, I just want to give you what you want so we can stop talking about like this, like in a very heated way. That may require some emotional work on your part, on their part, whatever. Talking things out and saying, I feel angry that you did da 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 da, or that you said, or that you won't do, or whatever, is not a bad thing. It's a grown-up thing to do. It's discussing. It's funny, in our world, we don't know how to discuss intelligently without getting angry. Gosh, you can't even watch political debates, right? Without seeing them like, they just throw lobs and arrows and angry things. In our homeschool, my kids in the high school level, they have to debate. And it sometimes stresses me out because they'll be really good friends debating, calling each other on the carpet, but they're learning how to discuss a very heated, passionate way and still be friends in the end. Be like, you know what, you brought your evidence, well done. And I wonder if we could do that as adults, we probably would be getting a lot of things accomplished. Understand that if you have a hard time talking about your anger, if you feel angry towards somebody and you're having a hard time doing it, that may require some emotional work on your end. Journaling your thoughts and feelings. I'm spoiler alert, every time we have a class, I'm going to tell you that you need a journal. Sorry. I'm not sorry. I shouldn't say that because that was a lie. I'm totally not sorry. I used to apologize. I used to kind of I know it's not for everybody. No. Journaling is for everybody. Everybody needs to do it because it's so simple. I was just coaching this gal this afternoon, this little girl, and I was like, look, girl, you can get Post-it notes and we can call that journaling. It does not have to be, I don't even have my nice journal. Most of the time I tell people, just get this. Look it already has a coffee stain on it for you. So lovely. It doesn't have to be nice. Your handwriting can totally suck. It's even better. Even better. Journaling helps get your thoughts from up here out on the paper. I've learned a little bit more about personalities in the last year, personality types. And what I realized is there's very few verbal people like me. Very few people are comfortable talking about just anything, anyone and everything, and discussing and debating and dialoguing. Most people are all up in their head, which is not a bad thing until it comes to negative emotions. Then you're dwelling and you're thinking and ruminating, and all of a sudden everything makes sense up here and it's all true. And then your world becomes what's between your ears. But the fact is that what you think up here may not actually be accurate, right? We see the world how we see it, so we process it how we see it. And if it's all up here, always and only, then we're always in our own little head, in our own little world. it's a form of stuffing. Whereas if we take I'm just going to take my Post-it so you don't get stressed out that I'm talking about a thing. If I take a Post-it and say, okay, I feel frustrated at the DPS lady because she gave me an ugly look and she wanted me to have a passport, which I don't know why I have to have a passport just to get my daggum Texas driver's license, but okay. See, I still feel triggered by that. If I write it out like that, I see it and go, it's not her fault. It's just policy. If I'm mad at the government, that's fruitless. It really serves no purpose. There's nothing I can do about it. It's fine. You know what I mean? Like I can just start thinking about it, looking at it for what it is not. And then, I can go, all right, it's fine. I'm going to breathe in my oils, breathe that in, think of a workable solution. I'm going to move on with my day. Shoot, you guys, I'll be honest with you. I was writing my notes for this class and I kind of did a couple spaces and just started journaling, just some thoughts, just some concerns and some fears I have about being a widow, and just did it. And guess what I got to do? Delete. No one's going to read it. But I got it out and I looked at it. I was like, that felt good. Okay. Yeah, I can see for what it is. There's no truth to that. Those are just silly, not silly fears. I don't want to call it. They're just things that are ruminating. But if I start thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking, well, then I'm just thinking and I'm not actually doing anything productive. So that's my spiel on journaling right now for today. Next time I'll talk about journaling again. And the next time I'll talk about it again and again and again and again. And if you read scripture, it's in there. Here's the thing. Journaling, writing your thoughts down, especially concerns, worries, wonders, whatever you want to call it. You look back in a year, 2 years, 3 years, and you're going to see the solution for it. You're going to see it worked itself out. You're going to see progress in your emotional well-being. You're going to see that job that you got, the way things worked out with your loved ones. You're going to see it. One of my favorite things about Facebook, and I know people don't like Facebook, but whatever. You have to do a lot of bad things to me to get me to not like you. I've made thousands of dollars for free on Facebook. That's just where I stand on the issue. I'm like, it was great. But one of the things that I love is that it has memories that come up. That's a journaling. If you write on your face just a fun thing, or it's a journal. It's cool. This week has been a hard memory for me with Facebook. While seeing me and my husband in our 20th anniversary and seeing that, I was just like, oh, I knew this was coming. I knew it. But I actually stayed up really late on Saturday night and looked at it when it turned Sunday. I was like, okay, I got it. But it was sweet. And I went back to it over and over. And I just saw the things he wrote about me and what I wrote about him. It was a sweet journal. I'm so grateful for that. But think about the things that you can write that the rest of, your 3,000 plus friends won't see. It's just between you and you. It's really cool. Another thing, I promise this will be done. And another thing we do in my emotion class is, I can't remember what module it is, but it's something, I think it's pretty early on. I have everybody write themselves a letter of where they want to see themselves in like 90 days, just dated for, 90 days from that day. I'm so proud of you. Look at how far you've come. You've worked on this, you've done that, you've excelled in this, just like what you want to see. And I encourage them, when you read it, be cheerful and proud of yourself in 90 days for what you did, the fact that you finished. And maybe if you didn't even live up to all those expectations, right? If you're like me, I have visions of grandeur. I'm going to lose 100 pounds and make $1 million in 30 days. I mean, that's just silly, but that kind of thing. It's okay. Rejoice in what you did do. Okay. The other thing you can do for expressing is use your essential oils. Really, essential oils are so powerful. When I got into essential oils, it was for, digest, peppermint, frankincense to heal, cure, and all that kind of stuff. But as I've gone on more, oils are so powerful for emotions. I mean, you guys know that you're here using your oils. But specifically, when you look at, okay, what are some oils for anger that are listed per the reference? We've got lavender, ylang ylang, tranquil, orange, peace and calming, and so many others, both of the chamomiles. Um, Anger is a very specific emotion, and yet it's also an umbrella of emotion. So it just depends, again, going back to our different reasons for anger, different types of anger. What is it? Do you need peace? Are you trying to uproot any kind of abandonment? Is that why you're angry? Those types of things, understanding, but just using your oils. Even orange oil, notice that it's in peace and calming, or tangerine, I think it is, not orange, but still same type of family. And peace and calming is a great one for kids who have outbursts of anger and ADD, ADHD, that sort of thing. Those citrus oils are so calming, but also they don't suppress, I was about to say that, they soothe that angry feeling. Use your oils. Many of the oils that we have will help with anger, but just as you play around with it, this is a great time to experiment with your oils, as you experiment with breathing and all of it, with journaling, all of that. When I've experimented and played around with my oils for different emotions, sometimes I have found that certain oils work better for certain emotions, and lo and behold, I end up uprooting and getting rid of an emotion that I didn't know I had. I think I've shared with you guys, sometimes I have realized, oh my word, I am bitter about this situation, or I have some bitterness, simply by using Trauma Life. And it helps to get it up and out. If there's injustice in the world, using an oil like hope, man, how many of us, if we could just sprinkle hope like holy water over the whole world, wouldn't that be lovely? But hope is an oil. I'm not sure how many times I've shared this story, so forgive me if you've heard it, but there was a woman who had just gotten out of the mental hospital, I guess back in 2018, 2019. And her friend that picked her up knew that we sold essential oils. So he's like, do you guys have anything? That month in particular, we received hope for free. So my husband had brought it along. He's like, I don't know, I'm gonna bring the kit. And then this, she didn't want to let that oil go. Out of all the oils that we shared with her, hope was that oil. I thought that was so powerful. Going back to breathing, as we walked through that, make some notes to yourself this evening about what things that you felt during the breath time, the breath work. Carve out some moments in your day so that you can practice your breathing. If you have a smartwatch, typically it'll say, take a moment to breathe. I think it's so fascinating that in our world, we have to have a smartwatch tell us to breathe, but there's the world we live in. Use it. Use that time. Set a timer on your phone. Put a sticky note that says breathe with a count of 4 or 5. But also have an essential oil with you while you're doing that. Because as you're breathing during a trigger of anger, or when you're working through anger, you just feel that rage or that frustration, those oils are going to do what they're going to do. They're going to get the junk out. The thing is your oils, you guys, I don't think I've ever talked about oils this much, not ever, but it's been a long time, but I have this sense that people are not using their oils as much. Your oils work like, okay, let's say you just ate like a pound of fiber. Just get a really good visual about what that would do to your digestive system. It would clean you out like right now, right? That's our oils for our emotions. The more you use your oils, the more you breathe them in, the less chance anger, frustration, bitterness, all of that has to stay. I promise you, the more you work through this, the more you talk it out, journaling it, doing all these things with your oils, it is like a fast track to getting you to emotional health. I mean, I'm here to tell you, I'm sitting through a season of tremendous grief, not only my own. I mean, I kind of feel like I'm cool. I I can grieve, not have my husband. It's fine. I've lived on my own before, but watching my children, that's a whole nother level of grief. Like I hate that so very much. And I'm here to tell you, between prayer and my oils and journaling, I feel like we're thriving more than if we didn't do that. I'll leave you with this. When and I feel bad that I can't remember, but when Gary Young passed away, I believe the next year, there was a challenge that everyone did. Not everybody, a lot of people did like 100 drops of oil. Gary Young was famous for famous for a lot of things, but one of the things was he just used, a ton of oils, ton of drops of oils. I think, what did he say? He did like 300 drops of frankincense a day because, he got a discount, or he would joke and say, I'm like, I want that discount. Anyway, so he would do that. And so there's people, you would let's do 100 drops of oils every day for a month and just see how we feel. And I did that in my oil group for a couple of years after. I'm going to tell you what, it was powerful. My husband and I remember one year, I think it was 2019, we did it actually 200 drops because we were already doing 100 drops. It wasn't a challenge. We were trying to do more. And biologically speaking, a lot of things shifted, or we were cleansing a lot. We were sweating a lot. Just things were really moving and grooving. And emotionally speaking, it was on point. So if you are in a position where you are really struggling emotionally, one of the easiest things that you can do is just use your oils more. Breathe and use your oils more. And if you've done that, and if you're still struggling and stuck, you guys know I have a class essentially free. It's now individual. It doesn't start at a certain time. It's on your own, at your own pace. We can discuss as much as you want or as little as you want as we walk through it. It's 28 modules that you walk through, again, at your own pace, whenever you're ready. So if you feel like you need a little bit more, you guys know where I stay. I'm happy to help you walk through. One of the things that I wanted to share with you is that I have a discount code for $100 off for anybody who's walked through these classes with me for the month of May. So it's not typically $300. So we are offering $100 off of that for all of you guys who have walked through this course. And I can put that link in, actually, when I email it out, or we'll put it on the YouTube channel. So with that, we'll stop the recording.